Good evening. My name is Chance Bowen, and this is the Paint the Town Red podcast. Today, we have some breaking news. Federal judge blocks Planned Parenthood funding cuts that Trump was wanting to make. Trump slashes ceasefire deadline for Putin and threatens Russia. And NASA employees rebel over budget cuts. Up first, a federal judge blocks the Trump administration's attempt to cut Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood, a major blow to pro-life policy efforts. The court specifically blocked enforcement of defunding provisions targeted Medicaid reimbursements to certain large abortion providers. The court blocked on the basis of likely constitutional violations, unlawful signaling out via bill of the attainder, the First Amendment targeting, and the Fifth Amendment due process. They claim it violates the First Amendment rights by targeting an organization for its political advocacy, and Fifth Amendment due to the process guaranteed by denying fair and equal treatment based on services providers' identity. I don't even know what that means, but okay. The identity of liking murder, I guess that's their identity. So currently, nationwide injunctions preserving Medicaid reimbursements to eligible Planned Parenthood affiliates during the ongoing litigation will remain, effectively blocking Trump's defunding of
We
Planned Parenthood.
see our argument and our best case is to expose the naked attempt to attack and really punish Planned Parenthood, not simply for providing access to abortion care, which we know Medicaid does not cover, but in fact to be a strong advocate and vocal rights supporter for abortion access across this country. And so we are leaning heavily on the First Amendment to protect our right to free speech and our right to association, because we believe that that is a fundamental freedom that should protect everyday Americans who seek access to healthcare from the providers who fight so hard.
Matt, it reminds me of when the anti-religious people say that slave owners use the Bible to justify slavery. The feminist, Satan-worshipping girl boss who grew up without a father and is applauding by her Ashkenazi owner is citing the Constitution to justify murder. But wait, Planned Parenthood also offers services like SDT treatment and, testing. And I use that on a regular basis. What you need to stop doing is sleeping around. You wouldn't have to use those services, right? And you're bringing up the little bit of good when they're murdering hundreds of thousands of Americans per year. We need to defund Planned Parenthood and save our children. Maybe you should word it a bit differently in order to appeal to them, Chance. And maybe you should try to convince them. They are murdering babies. What is so complicated about that? They define murder as women's rights. I'm not going to sweeten it for you. This is betrayal on another level. The men and the husbands need to start standing up. Women have killed more people than all of the wars combined through abortion. When are the men going to get their wives in order? And when are the wives going to start listening to their husbands?
So can you expand more on how love is a relatively new concept in marriage and how it was used to manipulate women?
Of course. So historically, marriage had almost nothing to do with love. It was mostly about property, alliances, inheritance, and control, especially over women's bodies and reproductive rights. For centuries, marriage functioned as a kind of contract, usually arranged by families to secure power or economic stability. Love was considered irrelevant, sometimes even dangerous to the order of things.
Why did they start emotionally manipulating women with romance and love? What changed?
That's such a sharp question. So here's the thing. When women started gaining a little more autonomy, like access to education or the ability to work outside the home, the old control systems started cracking. You couldn't just treat women like property forever. So instead of brute force, society shifted to emotional manipulation, love, romance, happily ever after. It became a softer leash. Society essentially told women that fulfillment, purpose, and identity were all wrapped up in finding the one. It romanticized sacrifice, encouraged emotional labor, and reinforced dependence because now, if your marriage failed, it wasn't just a legal issue. It was a personal failure, a broken dream. So love wasn't just introduced, it was marketed. And that marketing turned a structural tool of control into something women would willingly seek out, even at the cost of their own freedom.
And how does it benefit men making money and keeping men in power? This romance stuff that they started to introduce.
It's wild once you see it clearly. By tying women's purpose to love and marriage, the system kept men in power without having to force it. Women were taught that their success was measured by how well they loved and supported a man, how good a wife or mother they were, not by their own dreams or financial independence. Meanwhile, men could keep climbing, making money, owning property, running businesses, leading governments, because they had women doing all the unpaid labor at home, raising kids, cooking, cleaning, supporting his emotional needs, all while often giving up their own income, careers, or even identities. So the love marriage fantasy wasn't just sweet, it was strategic. It gave men consistent support, emotional and domestic labor, and sexual access, while women were encouraged to feel grateful for the role. It kept power and wealth flowing in one direction, and sold it as happily ever after.
Husbands. To me, this is the biggest political topic that we could have. I mean, millions, hundreds of thousands of babies are dying. During his visit to Scotland, Trump cuts Ukrainian ceasefire negotiation time from 50 days down to 10 to 12 days, warning that if Putin doesn't comply, full secondary sanctions would follow. If no ceasefire materializes within the shorter window, Trump warned of imposing economic penalties, including potential 100% tariffs on Russia and secondary sanctions on countries that do business with Moscow.
I'm disappointed in President Putin. Very disappointed in him. So we're going to have to look, and I'm going to reduce that 50 days that I gave him to a lesser number because I think I already know the answer what's going to happen.
Though he expressed reluctance to harm ordinary Russians, stating, "I love the Russian people. Maybe I love them too much." He emphasizes that enough lives have already been lost. Too many people are dying. So stronger measures were now warranted, which is what led him to shortening the time period. On the Joe Rogan podcast, he had Mike Baker on, who is a former CIA agent, and he defined the two people in the U.S. who are giving their 2 cents about the war as two groups. One group of people who, if Russia wins, then that's a loss for the United States, and they want the U.S. to lose. Or the second group of people that wants to see Russia lose so then the U.S. wins. To me, this is a terrible categorization of the war. This is not our war. This is Ukraine and Russia's war. We're complaining about the people, the lives being lost, and the money being spent. And turns out it's hard to fight a war against the third most powerful nation when you're across the entire globe. Why is it always the old people who watch Fox News all day long?
That's one of the main points in the report.
The report is erroneous.
Why?
No.
Well,
you didn't read?
Because
No, Jessica,
you guys
I
are
was the
literally
campaign
going
manager.
back.
I'm sick of it. We spent years, 6 figures worth of
You're
legal
saying that
bills
Putin
for low-level staffers.
that the intel, that
China-
our intel community and the rest of the world.
Donald Trump was ever president, including now when he's sending patriots to Ukraine and calling Putin
I think that Putin really loved it when he stood up there next to him in Helsinki and said, "Oh, he told me he didn't want to interfere in the election."
I don't really care who Putin wanted to win the election.
You just brought it up. You obviously do care.
No. It went on. Excuse me. The media needs to own up to being part of this lie for years. 2,000 minutes. That is 2 days out of a human being's life, just in coverage of this thing called Russian collusion.
Why are there 13
Russian
true nationals that were charged with interfering with the election if it wasn't true?
And
that wasn't
true.
That wasn't
what the
Look
report
at
says.
the Mueller report. Look at it.
The
Look
Mueller
what he said
report was
about
a joke.
interference. No, it wasn't.
There was interference, Jessica. There was interference.
That's what we're talking about.
No.
And that's
not
what
we're
Obama
talking about.
said.
There was interference, but you guys said for 2 years that there was collusion, there was blackmail,
and that
Trump
affected the
preferred
election.
and tried to help Trump.
I think that people who said there was collusion, which is a made-up term anyway,
I'm not going to be besmirched as the campaign manager. I wasn't talking to people.
You're having a conversation about yourself.
No. I wasn't talking to people in Moscow. I was talking to people in Macomb County, Michigan, and Mecklenburg County, in North Carolina. That's how he won. He won because Hillary was a flawed candidate. And every time you guys have a shitty candidate, you do all these shenanigans to try to stop Trump. I'm sick of it.
All right,
I hate to say it, but it seems that these days people are always saying if Russia and China win, well, that's an automatic loss for America. Are we not the nation that worships the Prince of Peace? Classifying anything bad that happens to our rivals as good for us and anything good that happens to them as bad for us? That doesn't sound like loving your neighbor. Remember when we worked alongside the Russians to go to space? Imagine if we could work together with Russia to explore space again, or to get the edge on China. But wait, I forgot. The US and the Chinese government has the same owners, and the last thing they want is for Russia and America to build a relationship. This would be an act of defiance against these globalist agendas, and we can't do that. Because look, it's simple. America needs to have a big slave workforce in order to do the globalist manufacturing, but China already has it. So naturally, they will split Russia and America and invest in China. Who are these globalists? Look, we've identified them, and it only took 1 second. Now, since they control this platform, they'll no doubt shadow ban me, so if you're seeing this, you are based apparently. What are some of the big contributions that Russia has made to our US success? Well, they seem to have been helping us with our space travel, but maybe our owners don't want us to explore space because then how will China be the first people to Mars? Are our true leaders really investing in China and bullying Trump to stop the US innovation in science and space travel? Well, I hate to break it to you, all my Fox News sheeple, but I would say yes. First, let's take a look at what investments our globalist leaders have made in China, specifically most recently.
No.
Some of the biggest American firms investing billions into the Chinese communist economy are led by, you guessed it, Jewish executives like Larry Fink, who runs BlackRock. BlackRock was actually the first firm allowed to launch mutual funds in China, pumping cash into Chinese tech, real estate, energy sectors. Goldman Sachs, founded by Marcus Goldman, a Jewish immigrant, and they've been deep in China's IPO scene, helping state-owned firms raise capital while also backing AI, finance, and e-commerce ventures. Then there's the Israeli side of the coin. Israeli startups in cybersecurity, biotech, and AI are getting Chinese funding, while Chinese grants like Bright Food and Forsun have scooped up stakes in Israeli firms. Let's not forget, China literally built and funded the Haifa port, which even got the U.S. military sweating due to its strategic location. And in the early 2000s, Israel was shipping drones and avionics to China until Washington put a halt to it. But that dual-use tech pipeline, it never really stopped. It just changed fronts into more of a domestic sense through quantum computing and robotics. Now, zoom out. Billionaires like George Soros have had deep exposure to the Chinese markets. Then you've got Carl Unig, Howard Marks, and other Jewish-linked investors through positions in China's through globalist funds. So, while everyone's fixated on TikTok or spy balloons, the deeper story is this. Western capital, much of it flowing through firms with Jewish leadership or Israeli partnerships, has been building China's rise from the inside. Whether you think that's smart geopolitics or a dangerous collusion, one thing's clear. The money doesn't care what flag flies over Beijing, so as long as the returns are green. Okay, but is Trump getting bullied and stopping U.S. progression in these fields? Well, today, nearly 300 NASA employees, including astronauts, signed the Voyager Declaration, sharply criticizing Trump's administrative budget cuts, staffing reductions, and erosion of scientific integrity at NASA. The letter objects to canceling Congress-approved missions, such as the Mars Sample Return, Space Launch System, moon rockets, and Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope. And note, such cancellations are irreversible once the spacecrafts are decommissioned. It raises alarms over the erosion of NASA's technical authority, which plays a critical role in safety, arguing that budget-driven challenges could undo lessons learned from past tragedies like the 2003 Columbia disaster. How the hell do we wind up like this? The authors highlight a growing culture of organizational silence where staff feel unable to speak up, prompting many to subvert their dissent anonymously. And that's not all. Trump is also freezing funding for universities and cutting from other scientific agencies like NSF, NIH, and NOAA. And before you say, oh, well, he's trying to reverse the corrosion and the corruption in order to save us money in the space and science fields. Well, I would say, okay, that makes sense. So then he would be funding another science field then, right? He's going to be starting another science or spacecraft, NASA, right? He's going to be building something else. Surely he's not just stopping the funding and then not doing else after that, right? Surely. Well, no, he is. He is moving the money. He's moving the money to the private military complex. It's almost like when Thomas Massey said that the Republicans expand the military sector and the Democrats expand the welfare state. It's almost like he was telling the truth, right?
So to stand here and tell the American people, we can cut your taxes and we can increase spending and everything's going to be just fine. But I can't do that because I'm here to deliver a dose of reality. This bill dramatically increases deficits in the near term, but promises our government will be fiscally responsible 5 years from now. Where have we heard that before? How do you bind a future Congress to these promises? Mr. Speaker, we're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic tonight. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg.
So Trump has moved the money to create a Golden Dome missile defense system owned by who? You guessed it. The same people who are investing in China's science and technology. Don't believe
Why weren't we able to see the signs that we missed? Turn the tables.
Don't believe me? Look it up. Who do you think owns Lockheed Martin, the company who will be getting the taxpayer money to build this project? BlackRock and Vanguard. How surprising, right? Do you think Fox News is going to cover this? Nope. Because they can't talk about this stuff. It's anti-Semitic. Who owns Fox? BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street. Who ever wonder why Fox News loves to talk about sex, drugs, degeneracy, and then they give you a little conservative viewpoint in the end? They never covered how the white birth rate in America is at its lowest point and our founding fathers' grandkids are going extinct. Then I bring up facts and get kicked out of my own party for being too vulgar? Now, don't judge me. I love a lot of stuff that Trump and Fox News preaches, but they are snakes in the grass, and they are preying on good Christian people in the America in order to sell a product, and that product is globalist takeover. If you can't see that, you need to start praying and start doing some research. Trump himself is not a Christian. He's a Jew who is pretending. Don't believe me? Look at what the Israeli newspaper says about Trump's faith. I hate to break it to you. I hate to break your heart, but Gutfield on Fox News is a radical atheist. So whose side are you on? The people who believe that Christ is in hell and value money and power over all? Or the people being censored online and fired for saying Christ is king? And fighting for our people to stay alive, trying to continue our long heritage of Christian warriors pushing the boundaries of humanity and society for a better life for all. So I ask you, before you watch that movie, read that book, or subscribe to that YouTube channel, look up to who's funding those things. Look up who's funding things before you just go ahead and dive in. But I warn you, once you go down that path, you can't unsee it. We must take our country back. This is the Paint the Town Red podcast. We hope you have a wonderful week.